Have you ever tried to forget someone, but they just won't leave your mind? No calls, no texts, no contact at all, yet somehow they're still there, living in your thoughts, showing up in random moments, even in silence. You start wondering why? Is it love? Is it attachment? Or is it something deeper that no one really talks about? Because the truth is, when someone stays on your mind without any contact, it usually means something powerful is happening beneath the surface. And today we're going to uncover exactly what that is. Not every person we meet leaves a lasting mark on us. Most people pass through our lives like background noise, pleasant, maybe even meaningful for a moment, but eventually they fade. Their memories blur, their presence dissolves, and one day you realize you haven't thought about them in a long time. But then there are those rare connections, the ones that don't fade, the ones that stay. When someone keeps showing up in your mind without any contact, it usually means they touched you on a level deeper than you even realized at the time. It wasn't just about conversations or moments you shared. It was about how they made you feel. Because at the end of the day, we don't hold on to people, we hold on to emotions. The way they understood you, the way they made you feel seen, the comfort, the excitement, even the pain, those emotions don't just disappear. And the truth is, your mind doesn't randomly hold on to things. It holds on to what mattered. So if someone is still living in your thoughts, it's not by accident. It's because in some way that connection became a part of you. It shaped your perspective, your expectations, maybe even your definition of love or connection, whether it was something beautiful or something that hurt you deeply. It left an imprint. Sometimes you might even question yourself. You might think, why am I still thinking about them? It's been so long. There's no contact. They've probably moved on. But that doesn't erase what you felt. Time can create distance, but it doesn't automatically erase depth. A deep emotional experience doesn't follow a schedule. It lingers in its own way, in its own time. And it's important to understand this. Missing someone or thinking about them constantly doesn't always mean you're meant to be with them. It doesn't always mean they're the one. What it does mean is that the connection had significance. It reached a part of you that not many people have access to. And your mind keeps revisiting it because it recognizes that significance, even if you don't fully understand it yet. In a strange way, these lingering thoughts are proof that you're capable of feeling deeply, that you experienced something real, something that went beyond surface level interaction. And while it can be confusing, even frustrating at times, it's also a reminder of your emotional depth. But here's where it gets even more important. Just because an emotional imprint stays doesn't mean it's meant to control you forever. It's there to be understood, not to keep you stuck. There's a difference between honoring what you felt and living in it endlessly. And often, the reason it keeps coming back is because there's still something within you that hasn't fully processed it. Maybe it's a lesson. Maybe it's a realization. Or maybe it's simply acceptance that what you felt was real, even if it didn't last. Because some people don't stay in your life, but they stay in your story. And then there's another layer to this, something a lot of people don't immediately realize. Sometimes it's not even the person you're holding on to, it's the lack of an ending that makes sense. Because as human beings, we crave clarity. We want things to feel complete. We want stories to have conclusions that we can understand, moments that we can neatly place in the past and say, okay, that's done. But when something ends without explanation, without closure, without a clear reason, your mind doesn't just accept it and move on. It keeps going back, trying to figure it out. That's why they keep appearing in your thoughts. Not necessarily because you still want them, but because your mind is still trying to solve something that feels unfinished. It replays conversations, reanalyzes moments, searches for hidden meanings in things they said or didn't say. You might catch yourself thinking, what if I had said this differently? Or what really happened there? And even though time has passed, those questions don't always fade. It's like reading a book and suddenly finding the last chapter missing. You wouldn't just forget about the story. You'd keep thinking about it, wondering how it was supposed to end. Your mind does the same thing with people. When something meaningful ends without resolution, it leaves a kind of open loop in your thoughts. And the difficult part is, not every story gives you the closure you want. Not every person comes back to explain themselves. Not every ending is clean or fair. Sometimes things just stop and you're left carrying the questions alone. That's where your mind steps in. It tries to create its own version of closure. It replays memories, builds scenarios, imagines conversations that never happened, all in an attempt to give you the understanding you didn't receive. But no matter how many times you go over it, it can still feel incomplete, because deep down, what you're really searching for is something that can't be recreated in your thoughts. You're searching for certainty. And here's the truth: that's not always easy to accept. Closure doesn't always come from the other person. In fact, most of the time, it doesn't. Waiting for someone else to explain, to apologize, or to give you answers can keep you stuck in that loop for far longer than necessary. Real closure is something you create within yourself. It's the moment you stop asking, why did this happen? And start accepting, it happened, and I may never fully understand why. It's choosing to let go of the need for every detail to make sense. Because sometimes the lack of clarity is the only clarity you're going to get. And that doesn't mean what you felt wasn't real. It doesn't mean the connection didn't matter. It simply means that not every meaningful experience comes with a satisfying explanation. So, when someone stays on your mind without contact, it could be your mind's way of trying to close a chapter that never properly ended. Not because you're weak, not because you can't move on, but because you're human, and humans are wired to seek understanding. But at some point, healing begins when you stop searching for answers in the past and start giving yourself permission to move forward without them. And then there's something even more confusing about all of this: the fact that distance doesn't seem to change how you feel. You can go days, weeks, even months without hearing from them. No messages, no updates, no presence in your daily life. And yet somehow the connection still feels alive in your mind. It almost doesn't make sense, does it? We're taught to believe that closeness requires contact, that if someone is no longer part of your everyday life, your feelings for them should naturally fade. Out of sight, out of mind. But real attachment doesn't always follow that rule, because attachment isn't built on constant communication. It's built on emotional experience. It's built on moments that meant something, conversations that reached you, and feelings that settled deeper than surface level. Once that kind of connection is formed, it doesn't just disappear because the person is no longer physically present. Think about it. There are people you talk to every single day who don't stay on your mind at all once the conversation ends. And then there's that one person you haven't spoken to in forever, yet their presence still lingers in your thoughts. That contrast alone tells you something important. It's not about frequency, it's about depth. When someone becomes emotionally significant to you, Your mind and your heart don't operate on logic anymore. They don't measure connection by time or distance. They respond to meaning. And if that meaning was strong enough, it can outlast physical presence entirely. That's why certain songs remind you of them. Certain places, certain words, even random moments can suddenly bring them back into your thoughts without warning. It's not because you're trying to hold on. It's because that connection has been stored somewhere deeper beyond your conscious control. And sometimes this can make you question yourself. You might wonder, why am I still attached when they're not even here anymore? Or why can't I just move on like a normal person? But there's nothing abnormal about it. It simply means that what you felt wasn't shallow. It had weight. It had impact. At the same time, it's important to recognize the difference between connection and presence. Just because someone still exists in your thoughts doesn't mean they still exist in your life in a real, active way. And holding on to the feeling of connection shouldn't stop you from living, growing, and experiencing new things. Because attachment without presence can sometimes turn into something one-sided. You're carrying the emotional weight of something that is no longer being shared. And if you're not careful, you can end up investing energy into a memory instead of your reality. But here's the deeper truth. Your ability to feel connected even in absence is not a weakness. It's actually a reflection of how deeply you can bond, how sincerely you can care. Not everyone has that capacity. The goal isn't to force yourself to forget or to shut down those feelings completely. It's to understand them, to recognize where they come from, and to gently bring yourself back to the present when your mind drifts too far into what's no longer there. Because connection may not need presence to exist, but your life still needs your presence to move forward. And at some point, you have to choose to be here, fully, even if a part of you still remembers what once was. And sometimes, what's really happening has less to do with them and more to do with you. Because when someone keeps showing up in your mind, it's often a sign that you're still processing what you felt when they were part of your life. Not everything we experience gets fully understood in the moment. In fact, most emotions don't. When you're in it, when you're talking to them, spending time with them, feeling everything as it happens, you're not analyzing it. You're just living it. It's only later, when there's distance, when things go quiet, that your mind finally has the space to reflect. And that's when everything starts to surface. The feelings you didn't fully acknowledge, the moments you didn't fully understand, the things you brushed past or ignored, they begin to come back, one thought at a time. That's why it can feel so random. You could be going about your day completely fine, and suddenly they cross your mind. Not because you're trying to revisit the past, but because something inside you is still unfolding. Your mind is trying to make sense of an emotional experience that didn't get fully processed when it was happening. And emotions aren't always simple. It's rarely just love or just pain. Sometimes it's both at the same time. You can miss someone and still know they weren't right for you. You can feel hurt and still appreciate what they meant to you. You can be confused about how something so meaningful could end the way it did. All of that can exist together, and your mind needs time to sort through it. That process doesn't follow a straight line. It doesn't happen in a clean, predictable way. Some days you feel like you've moved on completely, and other days the memories feel just as strong as they did before. That doesn't mean you're going backwards. It means you're working through layers. Because every time they come to mind, it's an opportunity for your mind to revisit the experience from a slightly different perspective, Maybe at first you only saw what you lost. Then later, you start to see what you learned. Then even later, you begin to understand what you needed, what you deserved, and what you might do differently in the future. It's a gradual shift, and it happens quietly. The mistake people often make is thinking they need to rush this process. They try to distract themselves, suppress their thoughts, or force themselves to just move on. But unprocessed emotions don't disappear, they wait. And the more you avoid them, the more they find ways to come back. So when that person shows up in your mind, instead of immediately pushing the thought away, sometimes it helps to pause and ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? Not about them, but about you. Are you feeling loss, confusion, regret, gratitude? There's usually something underneath the surface that's asking to be acknowledged. And once you start allowing yourself to feel those emotions without judgment, something begins to shift. The thoughts become less intrusive. The memories lose their intensity, not because you're forgetting, but because you're understanding. Because in the end, this isn't just about holding on to someone who's no longer there. It's about making sense of an experience that changed you in some way. It's about giving yourself the time and space to fully feel what you once felt so it doesn't stay unresolved inside you. And slowly, without even realizing it, those thoughts begin to visit less often. Not because you forced them out, but because they've finally been heard. Because sometimes the reason they're still on your mind is simply because your heart is still learning how to let them go. And if you look even deeper, there's another truth hidden in all of this. The people who stay on your mind often reveal something important about you, because it's easy to think that it's all about them, who they were, what they did, how they made you feel. But sometimes it's less about who they were as a person and more about what they represented in your life. The reason they linger in your thoughts is often because they connected to something you truly value, something that matters to you on a deeper level. Maybe they made you feel understood in a way you hadn't experienced before. Maybe they brought a sense of comfort or excitement or emotional safety that you didn't realize you needed until you felt it. Or maybe they challenged you, pushed you, made you see yourself differently. Whatever it was, it wasn't random. It resonated with something inside you. And that's why your mind keeps going back. Not just to the person, but to the feeling. Because those feelings are clues. They're showing you what you're drawn to, what you appreciate, what you crave in your connections with others. For example, if you keep thinking about how calm and safe you felt around them, that might tell you how much you value emotional security. If what stands out is how alive or excited you felt, maybe it shows your desire for passion and energy in your life. If you remember how deeply you could talk with them, maybe it reflects your need for meaningful, genuine connection. In a way, they become a mirror, not a perfect one, but enough to reflect parts of yourself that you might not have fully recognized before. And that's why letting go can feel so difficult, because it doesn't just feel like losing a person. It can feel like losing access to those feelings, those experiences, that version of yourself. But here's where it becomes important to shift your perspective. Those qualities you associate with them, the comfort, the understanding, the excitement, they didn't come from nowhere. Yes, they were part of the dynamic you shared, but you were part of that too. Your ability to feel those things, to experience them so deeply, comes from within you. They didn't create those values inside you, they revealed them. And once you start to see it that way, something changes. Instead of thinking, I miss them, because they were the only one who made me feel this way. You begin to realize, I miss how I felt, and that feeling is something I can experience again in a healthier, more aligned way. Because the goal isn't to hold onto one person just because they were the first or the strongest experience of something meaningful. The goal is to understand what that experience showed you about yourself, so you can seek it again, this time with more awareness, more clarity, and more self-respect. And sometimes the person who stays on your mind is not meant to stay in your life. They were there to introduce you to something about love, about connection, or about yourself. And once that lesson is planted, their role naturally comes to an end. That doesn't make it any less real. It doesn't make it any less meaningful. If anything, it makes it more valuable because it helped you understand a part of yourself that you might have otherwise overlooked. So instead of asking why they're still on your mind, try asking what they revealed to you. What did you feel with them that you don't want to settle for losing? What did that connection show you about what truly matters to you? Because once you understand that, you stop looking backward for something that's gone, and you start looking forward with a clearer sense of what you deserve. Because sometimes the people we can't forget are the ones who quietly teach us what we should never settle without. And when you bring all of this together, there's one final truth that quietly sits underneath it all. This experience isn't just about them. It's pointing you back to yourself, because it's easy to stay focused on the outside, to keep asking, why do I still think about them? What did they feel? Do they ever think about me? But those questions, as natural as they are, keep your attention locked in a place where you don't really have control. And the longer you stay there, the harder it becomes to move forward. But the moment you shift the focus inward, something begins to change. Because every thought, every memory, every emotion that keeps resurfacing is actually telling you something about your own inner world. It's showing you where you felt deeply, where you got attached, where you might have ignored your own needs, or where you experienced something meaningful that you don't want to lose again. In a way, this situation becomes less of a mystery about them and more of an invitation for you to understand yourself better. Maybe it's showing you that you gave more than you received. Maybe it's revealing that you held onto potential instead of reality. Or maybe it's simply reminding you of how deeply you can care when you truly open your heart. Whatever it is, there's something there for you to notice. And this is the part most people skip. Instead of pausing to reflect, they try to escape the feeling. They distract themselves, fill their time, or look for someone new to replace what they lost. And while that might bring temporary relief, it doesn't actually answer the deeper question of why this person still has a place in their mind. Because until you understand that, the pattern can repeat. That's why looking within matters so much. It allows you to take the experience and turn it into something meaningful instead of something that just lingers without purpose. It helps you see your own patterns, what you're drawn to, what you tolerate, what you ignore, and what you truly need. And the more honest you are with yourself, the clearer it becomes. You might realize that you were chasing a feeling more than a person, or that you were holding on to an idea of what could have been instead of accepting what actually was, or even that you were seeking something from them that you haven't fully given to yourself yet, like validation, reassurance, or a sense of worth. And that realization isn't meant to make you feel bad. It's meant to empower you, because once you see it, you have the ability to change it. You stop depending on someone else to complete an emotional gap within you. You start building that sense of clarity, stability, and self-awareness on your own. And from that place, your future connections become healthier, more balanced, and more real. Because you're no longer just reacting to feelings, you're understanding them. So when someone stays on your mind without contact, instead of seeing it as something that's holding you back, you can start to see it as something that's guiding you inward. Not to overthink, not to dwell, but to learn. To learn about your heart, your patterns, your values, and your growth. Because sometimes the reason they're still on your mind is not because you need them back, but because there's something within you that's ready to be understood.